Welcome back to the Campus Pressbox podcast. This is number 46, and today I am joined by two esteemed colleagues, Mitch Gatzke, otherwise known as the Michigan Mamba. I think we went through that last time. And also Danny Cunningham. Danny, I don't have a funky nickname for you yet, so that'll be something I can work on here in the off season. So, how you gentlemen doing?
Well, I'd be doing better if I had a nickname, but I guess I'll settle for just doing well.
Just doing well. Okay.
We'll get you one by the end of the show.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. I was thinking about it on the way in, and I was like, okay, he's in Cleveland, right? You're in Cleveland, right?
Correct.
Okay. I was like, well, we could call him the King of Cleveland, but there's already a king in Cleveland.
Yeah, there's some guy that plays basketball that they call that or something.
It's something. I don't know. He wears Nikes. I don't know what the hell he's doing. All right. Today, guys, we got a few things on the docket. And first of all is Jim Harbaugh. He's taken his recruiting to Florida. He's taken his team to Florida. He's doing all sorts of different things for the Michigan program. So, Danny, I'll just start off with you. What's your thought process on this?
I think it's pretty cool what Harbaugh is doing over at Michigan. If you like Michigan, he's a trendsetter, and if you are a fan of the Buckeyes or an SEC country, you absolutely hate this guy right now because you're scared of him. And I think that's what a lot of programs around the country are scared to admit, and that's why the SEC is trying to block the whole spring practice at IMG Academy in Florida thing. But what he's doing is trend-setting. It's big for recruiting. It gets his players out of the cold for a week during spring break, free of charge. Who wouldn't love that? And what he's doing is great. I think we're going to see a lot of programs try and follow suit. And for everyone that does have a problem with it, if you were involved in a program doing the same thing, you would love it. But because Harbaugh and Michigan thought of it first, people don't want him to do it because he's setting the trend instead of them.
Exactly. Mitch, what are your thoughts, man?
Totally agree. He's basically changing the way the game is played off the field. The recruiting game, it's always been ruthless and, kind of anything goes, but now Harbaugh is really ramping that up, taking his show on the road, and it's a great marketing tool. He gets the Michigan, obviously kids all around the country know what to expect from Michigan football. They know what it's all about, but taking that down to Florida and letting the kids down there actually see the way that practice is run, giving them a better idea of what to expect maybe if they decide to come to Michigan and a couple years or however long they're still in school. It's basically flipping the recruiting aspect on its side, and he's got everybody around the country reacting to his moves now, and I think that's exactly what he set out to do, and it's working well for him.
Yeah, I'm on board with everything you guys said, especially the marketing part of it. You can't. This is advertising you can't buy at all, and to see these kids in Florida get to see what a Michigan team looks like, get to see the colors, get to see the practice, anything and everything about this program. I'm sure Harbaugh is gonna just promote it, and the staff is gonna promote this around town wherever they're going to the nth degree. And it's going to leave a lasting impression. And now he's going to have more than, he's going to have a better foothold into that gold mine of recruiting down there in Florida. It's just insane. And Danny, you're exactly right. They're all, everybody that's pissed about this kind of thing is only upset because their guy didn't think of it. And, to kind of cry over spilt milk a little bit here is just kind of, to me, it's sour grapes, because Harbaugh's being trend setting, and trendsetters put their foot out there, and they take the risk, and that, to me, to get a foothold into the recruiting down there, this is a great risk for him.
Absolutely. And if Urban Meyer would have thought of this, everyone that bleeds scarlet and gray across the country would absolutely love it. But because Ohio State's fan base is so large, there's so many more people hating it. And that includes all the SEC fans as well, because they don't want anyone coming within miles of their footprint. But he's got the balls to do it, and that takes a lot for a guy to do that. And I think it's a great move for him. It's really going to pay dividends in the future.
Mitch?
No doubt. I mean, as good as he's proven to be on the field as a coach, I think he might even be a better marketer. He's got a brilliant mind when it comes to getting his word out in the most effective way to his target audience. He's reaching these kids who are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old and basically throwing everything that they thought they knew about the college recruiting process out the window and saying, here's how we're going to do it. Come play for me. Let's have some fun. And kids are eating it up right now, from the signing of the Stars event that he had on signing day here on campus. I actually live in Ann Arbor, so it was not too far from where I am, and I was in work that day, and the buzz around the city was just crazy. I mean, it's all anybody was talking about. There were celebrities all over campus. And you see all the kids, all the highly recruited kids who are coming to play for Harbaugh, and it's clear that he has something special here that people are envying. And it's interesting that, Danny, you talked about Urban Meyer. I was listening to the radio on my way into work today and heard that Urban and the Buckeyes are actually doing their own satellite camp down in Florida. Beyond that, I don't really have any details. I don't even know if it's really true, but just something that I heard on Sports Talk Radio today. And I think it's interesting that we're already seeing Urban Meyer kind of concede to Harbaugh's victory here and, follow in his footsteps and try to do some of the things that he's doing to capitalize on the buzz that Harbaugh's already created.
Yeah, and I did see that about the satellite camp. I believe it's in Jacksonville, but I know it's in Florida. I'm not positive on the Jacksonville thing, and I saw that just because Urban missed Florida so much, he had to get back. But yeah, you're right, and more than anything, Harbaugh has made Michigan attractive again. Because let's be honest, with Rich Rod and Brady Hoke, that wasn't the most attractive program in the world anymore. They've been dominated by Ohio State on the field and in recruiting recently, but Harbaugh's making it attractive again. It's his marketing, how he handles his players, how tough the team has become. And one thing that's been getting overlooked, in my opinion, is how they're shifting from Adidas to Jordan. They're going to be the first football program to have Jordan brand apparel, cleats, everything. That's going to go a long way with kids. In my opinion, what you wear matters a lot to recruits these days.
Oh, it absolutely matters. There's kids that I'm around all the time that, if the team that's recruiting them is not like a certain brand, like Nike, they don't even pay any attention to it. Because to them, Nike's the epitome of athletic apparel. I would tend to agree with that, but it is such a marketing ploy by Harbaugh, and that's what kids see. They see the attractiveness of the program again, and and this is a West Coast guy commenting on Michigan, saying that, like you said, Danny, with Rich Rod and Hoke, the program was almost borderline irrelevant. It was approaching like, okay, oh, what's Michigan? Oh, okay, whatever they're doing, because it just seemed like it wasn't what it was, and now Harbaugh's bringing that back.
And I think I can compare this to Notre Dame under Charlie Weiss.
Yeah.
What they really slipped. They were as irrelevant as Notre Dame can be. And I know it's hard for Notre Dame to be irrelevant because they are such a national brand. And it's the same thing with Michigan.
Absolutely.
The only difference is a TV contract that Notre Dame has, playing on national TV no matter what every week. But Brian Kelly did that at Notre Dame, not clearly as public or in the same era as Harbaugh, because of everything that goes on with social media now. It is a different era than it was even 5 or 6 years ago. But Michigan's undergoing the same sort of transition Notre Dame did.
Mitch?
It's interesting to me because there's been a lot of talk around this area, the way that Harbaugh is going about this. Let's be clear, he's not doing anything illegal according to NCAA rules, but some people are just rubbed the wrong way, I think. Some of the tactics he's using are just a little bit immoral as far as oversigning kids and then telling verbal commits, hey, we don't really have a scholarship for you anymore. You're more than welcome to still come to school and try to walk on, but there's nothing guaranteed for you anymore. Being ruthless as far as going after kids who have already committed to other schools. People at Michigan like to think that they're above all of the shady practices of the SEC. They like to say that they do things the Michigan way, and what Harbaugh has done is kind of scrap all that and say, the Michigan way is great, but it didn't get us a whole lot in the last 10 years. We need to think about elevating our game to compete with the teams in the SEC who are doing all of these things. And so I think it's rubbed people the wrong way for sure around here. But the Wolverines basically couldn't beat them, so they joined them. And the question I have for you guys is, was this the price of winning now in college football? Is this what it takes to be a top-ranked team in today's college football landscape where it is so much of the gloves-off mentality where anything goes and, the price of winning is high and other teams are paying it, so we might as well too. Is that what it takes now?
I think that's the world we live in these days. And whether you love that or hate that, it's the truth. It's the price of winning, and there's no other way to put it. And I think one other thing that maybe doesn't get talked about quite as much, but could be a thorn in Michigan's side, is that they've become the little brother in their own state. They were always the big brother to Michigan State, but recently Michigan State's been a lot better than them on the field, and I think that's really hurt them, and that's part of the reason Harbaugh is doing what he's doing. He's not only trying to beat the SEC and Ohio State, but he needs to become the best team in his state again.
Yeah, Harbaugh is trying to put the fence up around Michigan in terms of keeping his, the kids that, he wants in that state to stay in state. But to piggyback on what Danny says, this is, whether you like it or not, this is the way things are. And you can, out here in the Pac-12, there's plenty of shadiness going on. All you got to do is look at SC for plenty of shady stuff, and even Oregon the last few years with some shady practices. But, to me, as long as Harbaugh, and for that matter, any other coach, is still within the letter of the law in terms of, not breaking the rules and all that, then, things like he's doing in Florida, and even with recruits going after kids who committed, unless they sign that paper, I've always thought, okay, yeah, you can commit to a school, but until you sign the paper saying, yeah, you're going there, you can still go after that kid. And try and change his mind. I personally, I don't have a problem with that, because at the end of the day, what are these guys paid to do? They're paid to win. They're paid to bring in the talent. As much as, and I hear you, Mitch, with, you do it the Michigan way, you do it, you're above the fray, those types of things. But if Harbaugh doesn't win, and he's still not breaking rules, Michigan fans are going to be ticked off. They're going to want somebody else in here. Okay, Harbaugh couldn't rescue us. Who's going to rescue us now? So he's doing what he's doing, and like I said, as far as I know, he hasn't broken any rules. So, I think the people of Michigan, or the fans of Michigan, just have to get used to this is the way it is, and this is the way, and this is what you got to do to try and win ball games. I could be totally wrong with that, but that's just my take on it.
No, I'm glad you guys both agree with me because that's basically what I've been thinking. As far as the verbal commits go, can we just get rid of that altogether? Because it's a completely flawed system. It works both ways. Coaches can they can take away scholarships from kids who, thought they might have had a spot on a team. But a kid can flip-flop and say he verbally committed to Michigan State, and then come signing day, all of a sudden, oh, I'm going to Ann Arbor to play with Coach Harbaugh. It works both ways. So as far as that is concerned, I have no problem with it at all.
I don't see how that system's going to be changed because it's been like that forever, and it just hasn't been magnified the way it currently is because of social media that goes on. But if you guys remember the 30 for 30 on Brian Bosworth, he said he committed to every school he took a visit to. So it's not like this is new stuff. It's just magnified now because of everything we see on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram or the Bleacher Report videos or all those things. It's different now because we see it, but it's always been going on.
Yeah, it's always kind of been simmering below what everybody knew what was going, what people knew was going on. So, yeah, I mean, bottom line, hey, Harbaugh's God, I can't even freaking say his name anymore. Harbaugh, I know, third time, exactly, right? Harbaugh setting the trend. And, as much as this is going to bug Ohio State fans, look, who's following the Scarlet and Gray right now?
Yeah.
And I can see, I can see USC or UCLA doing something like this. I can see Oregon doing stuff like this out west, going, doing a camp in Texas or something like that. And, or even, going out to Florida and doing the same thing. So if this is gonna get you wins and get you the players you need, okay, this is just part of the ball game now. So. Okay, so there was this Fiesta Bowl game out here in the desert, and two teams barely known to everybody. It's some Notre Dame and some something about Ohio State. I don't know, but evidently they had a bunch of players in that game that are going to the combine, to the NFL combine. Been invited. Danny, what say you about that?
I was at the game, and I'm a Notre Dame fan. I absolutely can't stand Ohio State, so it was heartbreaking for me to see the outcome, even though it was
Amen,
what I
brother.
kind of expected. But it was unbelievable the amount of talent that was on that field. Now, I know, unfortunately, Joey Bosa got kicked out early, and Jalen Smith suffered that gruesome knee injury in the first quarter, and Adolphus Washington was suspended. But still, the amount of NFL talent on that field is unheard of for a college game. I'm seriously questioning what other bowl game has had that many people be immediately invited to the combine. And the thing about it is both these teams are so loaded with talent. There's going to be years just like this following for both teams where they're going to get 8 or 9 guys invited. So it's crazy to think how much talent was on that field that day.
Mitch?
I mean, I agree. It's really – it's something when you think about it, it makes you take a step back and realize how many kids are really at the level of being able to compete and start at the D1 level. There are plenty of kids on Notre Dame and Ohio State's rosters who are maybe in the second, third, even fourth slotted guy at any position who could be starting at just about every other school around the country. And what's interesting to me is these coaches continue to get these top-level recruits to come in, buy into the system, pay their dues for 2 or 3 years, and then start in their junior, senior seasons, and how that's really affected their progression into the NFL. It's completely different than the system in basketball where it seems to be the shortest amount of time you can stay in college, the better, because, for some reason, 19-year-olds playing professional basketball is what we want to see. But with football, it's really different. And also with some of the early retirements that we're seeing in the NFL now, it's just creating a very interesting dynamic. And I'm wondering if, at any point in time we're going to run into a vacuum where all of a sudden there is a lack of talent to fill 32 NFL rosters. But then you look at teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State, and it doesn't seem like there ever will be.
Yeah, I mean, the only other game that in my life that I could even think of that I saw live that would, equal maybe the amount of talent was when I saw USC and Texas at the national title game, like in 06 or 05, whenever that was, and just sitting there, my brother and I going, okay, there's Vince Young, there's Reggie Bush, there's all this talent between the two teams, and it was almost like we were watching an NFL game, like a future NFL game, and to see the amount of talent that both those squads has was insane. And Mitch, you hit it right on the head with, man, these guys just keep getting the kids to come in and buy into the system. When with a lot of these athletes now, it's me. Yeah. But something with Brian Kelly and Urban Meyer makes these kids just, okay, I gotta put that side of me away, and I gotta focus on team. I gotta do what they want me to do. I gotta do my job. I gotta, all those kind of things, and they just buy in. Danny, you had something else?
The only other game I can think of where there was this much NFL talent on the field was actually any game the 2001 Miami Hurricanes played in, quite honestly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was the first thing that came to my mind, was maybe the national championship game against Ohio State. But then you start to think about the Ohio State team, and really, I mean, who was on that team other than Maurice Clarett?
Chris Gamble, I think, had some time in the NFL. I don't know, because I mean, Craig Krenzel wasn't anything in the NFL, or
right.
Not too many guys from Ohio State, but even the year before that Miami team with Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow, Clinton Portis, Frank Gore. Oh my God, that team was loaded.
And you go back to the other U teams in terms of, Russell Maryland and Ray Lewis, and and some of those defenses back in the day were just loaded as well. I mean, it was just it was almost unfair with the amount of talent that they would put on the table. Now, hey, quick thing here. So we have an 8th grader getting some kind of offer from the U. Okay, and we're not talking about Utah. We're talking about Miami. Because those fans up in Utah like to put the U sign up. I'm like, oh, darling, don't do that.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. I'm like, man, the snow up in Salt Lake has got to, people. But what are your Mitch? We'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this young kid, an 8th grader who's approximately 14 at the time, getting some kind of offer from Miami?
Well, I think this offer, whatever it may be, is just a pawn on the chessboard right now. I'm wondering if Mark Richt is making a statement with this. Things have been real rocky in Miami recently, and I got to think that they want Richt to stay long term. At least they should. I mean, you look at the last 2 coaches they had. Randy Shannon and Al Golden didn't do anything. I think they were both. Neither one won a bowl game. The team hasn't won 10 games since 2003. There were some sanctions handed down from that weird Nevin Shapiro situation a few years ago. The U really needs a steady hand right now to help stabilize the program, and I'm looking at this as Rick's way of saying that he's there to stay for the long haul. Because this 8th grader, won't be on campus until 2020. So my feeling is this is Rick's way of saying, I'm still going to be here by the time this kid finally gets to campus.
Yeah. Danny?
Yeah, I think it's scary that we're offering not we, but that college football is now offering 8th graders. A 14-year-old kid has said where he's going to college. He's not even in high school. I remember when this happened way back with USC when they offered a 7th grader. who committed and is now actually a wide receiver at West Virginia. But they offered a 7th grade quarterback committed to USC. He knew where he was going to college before he knew where he was going to high school. That's absolutely outrageous to me. Now, I know if I was in this 14-year-old kid's shoes, I'd be like, hey, this is the coolest thing ever. Because when I was 14, no one was recruiting me. That didn't happen until later on in high school like normal kids. But it's outrageous that we're saying 13 or 14-year-old kids, hey, if you want to come play football for me, I'll pay for your college. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and to an extent, just being around high school programs as long as I have, it is well known that, there's rankings of the best 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, and obviously all the way through high school. But those middle school years, there are rankings for those kids that you can find in terms of position, and they'll list the height, they'll list the weight, they'll do, which to me it just blows my mind. And Danny, I'm with you. Like he got an offer to go to college where he may have not have known where he was going to high school. He may have got his first offer to college before he had his first kiss, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
kind of deal. It just seems nuts. And
I want to know. I want to know what's in the water that this kid's already 6'3", 185. I played college football and never hit those numbers.
I wish I was 6'3", but I don't know what the heck's in the water.
That might be the craziest part to me, is that this quarterback's in 8th grade and 6'3", 185 already.
That's a big boy. Where's he from?
I forget where he's from. I will look that up and get back to you.
But yeah, I mean, and it doesn't matter the sport. They do this for basketball too. I've seen rankings of the best 6th graders in the country, the best 7th graders in the country, the best point guards, 8th graders, and the whole thing. And some of me just wonders, hey, is this the best thing that we should be doing? Are we selling these kids short? Are we setting them up for failure? Which to an extent, I think we are. Because any kid these days, and maybe even back when I was a kid, way back in the Stone Age, was, if you saw your name on a ranking board, you're like, heck yeah, look at that. I'm number 7 point guard, or the number 7 running back, or, whatever that may be. And sometimes I feel for the kids, because I just don't want them to read into it too much, and then it just all falls apart on them, because a lot of times it does. What do you think, Mitch?
Yeah, I think you guys are right on when you're saying this is a scary thing that we're seeing here. And Mike, I don't want to get too personal here, but I want to ask you, you're a parent. Let's say this 8th grader is your kid, and he gets a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, come play football for us." How do you react to that?
Okay, now seeing that I work in education and I coach high school sports, I know what that letter really is about. It's not an offer. It's not, an official offer, because the coach can't really talk. I mean, these letters are produced in mass. So I would tell my son, Zach, I'd sit him down and go, okay, look, obviously someone thinks you can play. Obviously someone thinks you have talent. Okay? And let's say the letter, just for argument's sake, let's say he's a running back, and USC gave him the letter. I would say, hey, nice job getting the letter, but you're not even in high school, so let's just pump the brakes here a little bit. That does not mean you're going to go to USC. That doesn't even mean you're going to go, to a big school. That doesn't even mean that you may even, between now and when you're a senior, you could have 2 busted knees and then your dream is all over in terms of playing football.
That's putting a good picture in his head.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, for me, I would give my son a dose of reality.
Something that he needs to, Mike, you're totally right.
So and I may be the anomaly with it just because I've been around that stuff a lot and I know how it works. But, for a lot of these parents that aren't around it, I mean, I can certainly see a parent, and these days, holy Christ, getting on social media and going, hey, look at the letter, and, posting a picture of it and her son holding it or his son holding, that kind of thing. And just, it kind of spirals out of control. And then you got an ego of a junior high kid, dear God. And it's, you're setting that kid up for, if it goes south on him, just for years in terms of, just being upset or maybe even depressed. I mean, I don't know, but for me, it's just, hey, great. Doesn't mean you stop working. It doesn't mean you just go, I'm going to USC. God, if I heard my son say that, I would kick his ass.
Well, yeah, because you want him to go to Oregon State, right?
Well, I mean, okay, well, once a Beaver fan, always a Beaver fan. But, it would be one of those things. I just wouldn't want to get his ego so inflated. Just, it would bother me. And because I see it with kids all the time. They get this stuff and it's like, oh, I'm, like I've been saying, like I'm going here, I'm going there. And no, you're not. Not yet. Not until you sign a paper. Not until you put your name on it. You're not going anywhere. So, I mean, that's just my take. I mean, and you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but Danny, I don't know if you have kids, what would you do if it was your son?
I don't have kids. I'm 22 and still in college, so we're going to keep it me not having kids for a little while here.
All right. Just stay on the practice team. That's good.
Feel you on that one.
But I recently went through the recruiting process 4 or 5 years ago because I did get a scholarship to play college football, so I know what it's about, not nearly to the extent of the Miamis or USC or Notre Dame or Ohio State knocking on my door. But I know a little bit what it's about. And looking up this Harrison Bailey kid, he has been on a visit to Miami apparently because there's pictures of him with Mark Richt forming the U with a U chalkboard in the background. There's a picture of him in a Miami jersey with Miami helmets in the background. It looks like he's in an equipment room almost. Says he checks in at 6'3", 175, and said that Coach Richt said to him that we know you're talented and we know you won't get a big head. We want to offer you a scholarship. Those are pretty big words to give an 8th grader. And if I had a son, and thank God I don't, but if I did, I don't know how I would handle that situation. I would obviously be ecstatic that my kid's in 8th grade and he's getting Division I looks already. That's a pretty cool thing because it certainly doesn't happen to everybody. But at the same time, like you said, you do have to pump the brakes because nothing's guaranteed. And like you said, injuries happen. I went through 5 surgeries in 3 years. I know more than anyone that injuries do happen. And I would be obviously ecstatic for my son, but at the same time, I'd be very cautious about everything that could unfold within the next 5 years until National Signing Day in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mitch, we'll turn it on you. If you had a son, spawn of Mitch, here we go. What would you say?
Well, I'd tell him he better work hard on keeping himself on top of his game, because if nothing else, I'm thinking that this letter is going to serve as a target on this kid's back. He's going to come into high school already supposedly going to the University of Miami in 4 years. How is his high school coach going to react to that? How are his high school teammates going to react to that? How are opposing players going to react to that?
He'll have a target.
Exactly. It's going to serve as a huge target on his back. I would tell the kid, hey, you need to stay focused because this can easily go away. Mike, as you said, this can easily go away in the 5 years that we still have until this becomes official. So, man, I mean, I'd almost wonder if it would be better for him to take a year off. And, I don't even know how I would handle this situation, to be honest with you. I'm astounded, but I believe it. I think we're to the point where we're going to start seeing more of this happen. The process just begins earlier and earlier with these guys. And as long as kids are receptive to it, and as long as the rules allow for it, it's going to keep happening, and it's probably going to keep getting worse.
All right. Okay. Hey, let's move on to Notre Dame. I think this is a topic Danny's going to enjoy here. A lot of stuff going on at Notre Dame, Danny. Fill us in.
Tons of stuff. Brian Kelly just got a 6-year contract extension. Corey Robinson was just elected student body president, which has never been done by a football player before at the university, which I find very interesting. And I know Ben Belden recently wrote an article on Campus Pressbox about that. And Steve Elmer is starting offensive lineman for the past 3 years, just decided that he wants to pursue a job as opposed to playing football anymore. I know people may have seen that. He was recently an intern for one of the congressmen in Washington, D.C. over the past summer, and I think that's where he's headed. So a lot of things have been going on in South Bend recently.
With the Brian Kelly contract, have they released numbers on it?
I have not seen any numbers. I would like to think that they're tending to shy away from that after the disaster that was the Charlie Weiss extension. I know it is 6 years, but I have no idea how much he's going to be getting paid. I would assume he's going to be taken care of financially, however.
I'm sure. How much was he making in the last few years? Was he in the $4 to $5 million range?
To be honest with you, I'm not completely sure. I would have to assume he was between $5 and $6 million, probably. Notre Dame does have more money than God, so money is not a concern for them. But I'm not sure that I've seen those figures either.
Man, that's a lot of money. So, yeah, Brian, I mean, he's going to be like Saban. He's going to be taken care of. I'm sure there might be people paying off his house or, at some point. Corey Robinson, talk about that. When I saw this story, and I was like, you know what? I have never heard of a player at any school, being like the student body president or whatever Corey's going to be. But as you said before we went on, how much of a distraction is this going to be? Since his season last year wasn't in your estimation not one of his better years.
Yeah, and a little background information on Corey. Obviously, his father is the Admiral David Robinson, and he's a very bright young man. He goes to Notre Dame for the education, I truly believe, because the other school he looked at, I think Navy was his second choice, and obviously he has been athletically gifted. And he's been on the field for Notre Dame since he was a freshman. In fact, in last year's batch of way, way, way too early mock drafts, he was slated as a first-round draft pick, a late first-round draft pick, and he did not quite have the season that many people envisioned for him. And after the Fiesta Bowl, he really contemplated giving up football. And I know that he had contemplated that through the season. I had heard through the grapevine. But I'm curious to see how much of a distraction this is, because being the student body president anywhere is a big deal, especially at Notre Dame. I don't know how well he's going to handle it. And a very interesting tidbit about the election is that the party that ran against him neither candidate were athletes, but they were managed by Jerry Tillery, who's actually a freshman defensive lineman for Notre Dame, which was pretty cool. But the whole thing about him being student body president is cool, but at the same time, how much is it going to take away from his ability on the football field, especially coming off of a down year where he really got overshadowed by Will Fuller?
Mitch, what do you think? What do you think about this Corey Robinson deal?
I'm wondering, is this something that he ran for and wanted to win, or was this kind of like a joke, like, let's see if we can get him elected? Is this for real, or?
No, this is 100% for real.
Okay, so he wanted to do this and knows fully that it's going to take probably more time than he has to fully commit to both.
Yes, he totally understands that, and I had read that his goal after football, if the NFL doesn't work out, he wants to pursue a Rhodes Scholarship. He's a bright kid. There's no doubt about that, but it really makes you question how dedicated he is to football. And if he's not dedicated, there might not be anything wrong with that. If he can handle it, that's that's great. It's an awesome story if he can. But if he can't, there's going to be tons of questions about how much is on this kid's plate.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like he should just kind of call it quits on the football career because, I mean, you talked about him not having such a great season last year. I mean, I know he's still a highly thought of prospect for the NFL, but it sounds like he has other options and maybe even better options.
Yeah, nothing's wrong with that if that's what he wants to pursue. I hope it works out that he can do both. I hope he can be successful in office, per se, and also on the field. But it's going to be very interesting how it plays out.
Now, what about this Demetrius Roberts? I thought this was unique. And he's just he's making the decision to go work in DC, correct? I mean, he's this kind of.
No, this is Steve Elmer. Steve Elmer is.
Oh, Steve Elmer. Okay.
He just left the football team, I believe, 2 days ago. He accepted a job, and he kind of gave off the impression that football was just an avenue for him to get an education, and he'll graduate in May and then accept the job. So good for him, in all honesty. You can't blame a guy for accepting a career if maybe an NFL one wasn't in his future. And he said that he kind of lost a desire to be a big-time football player. It wasn't in his heart. And I really can't fault a kid. If your heart's not in it, you're not going to be successful. If your heart's in something else, go pursue something else. I agree with what he did, and I think it's a great move for him. It hurts Notre Dame's offensive line, but with the offensive linemen they've put out recently, I wouldn't be too worried about what they have in stock there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that Kelly's done a pretty good job of keeping the depth there, at a very high level. So, Mitch, what do you think about this guy just going? You know what? I'm not a football player anymore. I'm gonna go work for the government.
I think we need to applaud him for making this decision. It's got to be tough, when you put so much into being a football player at such a high level. It's not an easy decision to just say, you know what, this isn't what I want anymore. It's something that all athletes eventually have to come to terms with. Everybody's career ends at some point, and I'm happy for this kid that he was able to realize at this point that as far as a career is concerned, this is the best move for him, and I hope he is nothing but successful in his real career now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never fault an athlete for saying, you know what, I'm going to use this scholarship to better my life in some way, whether it's going to the pros or whether it's actually for the education, like this young man did, and it's just it's just another avenue for him, because. As much as we get focused on, the X's and the O's and why coaches do this or why players are doing that, at the end of the day, their education and their life after football is probably more important than what they're doing on the field. So, I'm right with you guys. I applaud this kid the whole way. Now, Danny, let me ask you about Notre Dame for next year. What do you envision for the Irish?
I think they'll be very competitive again, hoping for a spot in the college football playoff, just as they were this year until they lost to Stanford in their last game of the regular season. Their schedule, they don't see Clemson this year. They don't see Florida State this year. I know Michigan State's back on the schedule, along with USC as always and Stanford as always. So I think they'll be very competitive. I think it's going to be another 1 or 2 loss season. They'll be a fringe playoff team. I think that's going to be what we are going to regularly see out of Brian Kelly coach teams at Notre Dame. What worries me is the quarterback situation, because if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I think that Deshaun Kaiser did a great job, but at the end of the day, Malik Zaire was a starter for a reason. And I'm very, very curious to see how this plays out throughout spring ball and through the summer.
Yeah, I think Kelly has to make a decision. You don't want to have this Ohio State issue where you go between the two and you kind of leave it out in the open a little bit. I think you just through spring ball, the spring game, summer ball, and then you go, okay, whoever is the guy, and here we go. So, Mitch?
Yeah, I totally agree. The two-quarterback system never, ever works under any circumstances ever. But it's kind of a shame when you have two guys who could both start at quarterback because it happened a few years ago with Michigan. Denard Robinson was on the team. Devin Gardner comes in. They move Gardner to receiver, and then Robinson doesn't really work out as a QB. He was more of an athlete, and then they try to move Gardner back to quarterback, and that really kind of messed with his progression. It kind of sucks, honestly. And if I had to pick right now, I think that I think that Deshaun Kaiser would end up winning his job back, just because he was able to play a lot more football last year, obviously, than Malik Zaire was able to, getting injured so early in the season. But that'll be probably the premier position battle to watch here before the start of the 2016 season.
So, in the end, is Notre Dame going to be in the playoff?
Jesus.
In February.
It's February 17th.
Well, I say no. I say no just because I think for Notre Dame to make it into the playoff in the current the current way that things are, basically they'd need to go undefeated and have no other ACC team really have a claim to stake at the playoff.
I disagree with that take, just because this year, if they would have beaten Stanford, I think they would have gotten in the playoff. A one-loss Notre Dame is too big of a brand to keep out, especially if there's an ACC team with a similar record. Now, Clemson went undefeated. If Clemson would have lost a game and Notre Dame would have had one loss, you can't keep Notre Dame out. They're too big. It's the same thing we saw with Ohio State the year they won the national title. Yeah, they justified it because they ended up beating Alabama and Oregon, but the only reason Ohio State got in over Baylor and TCU was because they're Ohio State. If that would have been if Baylor and Ohio State would have flipped spots, there's no way. It just doesn't happen. If Baylor would have been Texas or Oklahoma that year, Ohio State doesn't get in. But because they were Baylor, Ohio State gets in. I think we would see something like that with Notre Dame. As far as if they make it next year, it's too early for me to say. If I had to say, I would probably say no, because I have no idea what's going to happen at quarterback. Yeah. It depends there. There's so much that needs to take place before I could go on record and make an opinion or make a guess on that.
Oh, it's all good. It's February, Anything else, gentlemen? Anything good for the order here, or we?
Quick question before we sign off here. We touched on the 6-year deal for Brian Kelly. Danny, do you think he finishes that deal? Do you think he stays for the 6 years, or is he going to be out before that contract expires?
I think Brian Kelly will be there for the 6 years. I think the whole NFL ship has sailed with him. If he would have gone, I think it would have been last year or the year he interviewed for the Eagles job. I think if that would have been it. But I don't see him jumping ship anywhere. He likes Notre Dame. He likes what he's got going on there. I would put money on him being there for all 6 years.
All right, good.
All right. Well, hey, Mitch, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at GreatGatzke, Gatzke. Find me on Campus Pressbox, writing occasionally. I don't do a whole lot in the off season, but I should be ramping up here soon. So yeah, find me there.
Danny, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at DCunninghamCLE. You can listen to me not talk currently on ESPN Cleveland 850 WKNR, and I am also on Campus Pressbox, currently on a little bit of a hiatus due to the whole off-season thing, but I'll be getting back at it shortly, just like Mitch.
All right, you can find me, Mike Wilson, on Twitter at Pigskin Opinion. You can also find me as well at campuspressbox.com, writing all things Pac-12. And you can even email me if you so choose at mike.wilson@campuspressbox.com. So for Mitch and Danny, This is Mike Wilson. We will see you guys next time.